sleeper! Look at this! It's a lion salt!
Wrestling is what everybody wants to see.
Tony is a legendary promoter.
People don't really understand what was going on up here.
Tony was like a feeding system almost with all the guys he had.
He just suplexed them outside the ring!
And that's pretty amazing for a company out of Winnipeg. It's a great story.
Promoter Tony Canelo is here!
As a promoter, he's got to go through me.
That's all the people need to know.
Hi, everybody. Hope you're ready for another hour of action-packed wrestling excitement here on WFWA Main Event Wrestling. Joe Aiello live outside the Pony Corral here in Winnipeg, Manitoba. We have got an action-packed hour coming up.
As a promoter, they have a contract with me, and I don't want no drugs, no alcohol, respect the premise that we go, to don't touch anything or take does not belong to you. Those are my rules, by contract, verbally, the way you want to say it. If they break those rules, simple, I leave them here. They have broken the contract, and I don't pay them, simple. My job is as a promoter and a booker, once they realize what the cost is, and once they realize who they want to see, I phone the wrestler, whatever it might be, mostly 95% from the United States. I'll make a deal with them to fit in the price that I'm going to get from the reservation, like a Deer Lake. And it takes a long time. It takes approximately 2 months to set it up.
Where and what year were you born?
You really want to know too much, don't you? But anyway, I was born 1942, August the 8th.
Where though? Can you add it all in? I was born in...
Oh, I see. Okay, let's start all over again. You asked me what year I was born.
That's it. And where?
You didn't say where.
Very first word.
You can't read.
Hospital.
Okay.
Yeah.
Start all over again. Ask me again. I was born in Calabria, Italy, Bovalino Marina, 1942, August the 8th. Arrived in Canada in 1953. It was only yesterday, but it was 1953. Well, the first house that I lived on was on 238 Manitoba Street, just off Main. In the North End, I stayed about a year, I guess, and then we moved, just right off.
Then you burned it down.
Hello? Hello? From the elder Italian people, says, hey, Tony, if somebody calls you a DP or a WAP, just smash him. And I did. Now, of course, I got my lumps and so forth. And to get better through the fighting game, and I figured, you know what? I'm going to learn to be a wrestler, and I'll fix everyone up. Yeah, I was about 14 years old, and I started actually at the amateur wrestling at the YMCA in Winnipeg here. Went to school there for about approximately 3 years. And actually, one of the greatest teachers I ever had was Alfred Werr, which is in the Hall of Fame in amateur wrestling books. And he told me, Tony, when you put me off balance, then you're learning. It took me about believe me, about a year before I put that guy off balance. I got into the professional wrestling world age 17, actually. My first match was in Minneapolis. And I did not go there to wrestle, actually. The local wrestlers said, Tony, why don't you come for a ride to Minneapolis? And it to watch wrestling, that is. And when I got there, Wally Carbo and Vern Gagne, which they represent the American Wrestling Alliance, AWA, while I was there, they said, "Hey kid, you wanna make $75?" I said, "Do what?" "Wrestle." They put me in that ring with, I'm telling you, 6'4", one of the top villain they had, and wrestled the guy. Of course, he beat me. Jim Trivanoff, he was the wrestling commissioner those days for the amateur and professional. He see me on television, and took away my amateur card away from me, and he says, "Kid, if you want your amateur card back as an amateur, you got to wait 5 years." Well, you know, you're 17 years old, you're not going to wait no 5 years. And of course, I lost my amateur statics, and the AWA told me, he says, "Put some pounds, and we could use later on," which I did. And that time I weighed maybe 150 pounds and put on about 50 pounds in a year and a half. And I wrestled for them after that for approximately 12 years on the road. Back in the 60s, became the Flying Italian with my partner, Guy Vinci. We were one of the top tag teams, middleweights, across the country. We were tag team champions, and then, of course, I do remember I was a single champion, he was a single champion, and it kept going down the ladder.
They needed 3 planes to fly us to Deer Lake. I wonder why. It was too much weight. You're taping or what?
Yeah. Want to wave?
Hey?
Want to say hello to your family and friends?
Yeah, hello everybody. Let me tell you guys, if this plane goes down, I will say hello and goodbye to your friends.
Hey, Jody. That looks so funny. I forgot about that.
Today is July 1st. Big celebration here at Deer Lake. And I would say about 4 hours from now, see this location here, it'd be completely sold out. So we're here to entertain the people, have fun, and make everybody happy. Then we drive back to Winnipeg, where I'm from, and the rest of the wrestlers go where they're from. Simple as that.
I've been working with Tony since probably about 1999, and not only in this area but around the world. Tony is a legendary promoter, and notwithstanding, Tony's also a great guy, so it makes it easy to come back and work for him.
I definitely would consider doing this again with Tony. Seems like a great crew he brings out every time. I was doing a job out in Little Grand Rapids, and he was doing a show out there at the same time, so I went to go watch him, and his crew at the time seemed pretty good too, so it'd be good to come back with Tony.
Back in 1971, I was 27 years old, and I always wanted to become a wrestler. That was one of my goals, my dreams of when I was a young person raised on a farm. And then I seen that ad in the newspaper that Tony Condello had a school for wrestling in Winnipeg. So I said, here's my chance to become a wrestler.
Yeah, the intention of me opening up that school was to start my own business, really. That was the intention. So I figure if I teach a bunch of guys so I can get a team going, and I was thinking of opening up my own promotion. Well, the first school that I opened was on Donald Street, just downtown Winnipeg here. After that, I opened up a different location, which was Corydon Waterloo. That's in the basement of one of my beauty salons. As you might know, that actually by trade, as I'm a hairstylist, really. So I had a full basement there, and I figured, you know what, put a ring here, doesn't cost me any more money for rent, and a lot of people came from that basement. I'll tell you, a lot of wrestlers, good wrestlers, they came out of there.
Well, our training consists of at least 3 times a week, right through the year, summer and winter, for almost 2 years of hard hard rock training to so I could accomplish my goals and dreams.
It was the first school in North America open to the public to become a professional wrestler. Was me.
He was a nice guy. He wanted to accomplish his dream to become a local promoter and to promote wrestling all over Manitoba. And he was very selective to the guys that he could have in his roster. So we had to follow what he wanted done, because Tony's been wrestling for many, many years prior to that. So he had the knowledge of wrestling.
At that time, I had about 50 students under my belt, and I taught them.
Scotty Campbell started. One I really remember is Roddy Piper.
He was a 17-year-old kid at that time, and I must say, they only paid me $10 down payment for the classes, which was $40 a month those days, and I never seen another dime after that. But he had a lot of talent, and I knew very well that one of these days he'll become a big superstar. And he did. Of course, there's another guy I have to mention that became really good. His real name is Fred Peloquin from Winnipeg here. I created the guy. I gave him a new hairstyle. He still has it today. He's bald and he had a beard, and I called him the French Mad Dog.
It made me become the character of the style and the look that I wanted to be. And finally, Tony, through his barbershop, he shaved my head and cut my beard, and I looked like a vicious French mad dog. And that's what I did. And nobody stopped me from being that all the way through in my career as a pro wrestler.
I'm gonna promise you one thing, I'm gonna get the job done.
My first promotional card that I did with the students that I had was 1973, June 5th. And they happened at 150 River Avenue in Winnipeg here. Actually, I remember exactly how many people I drew. 1,236. That was pretty good for those days.
That's the first match. All the students from his school performed on that match that night, yes.
And that's where Fred Peloquin, the French Mad Dog, he wrestled that night, and Rod Piper wrestled that night. He was on the card, and many other local guys that I had. That was the first promotion. Repeated again, 1973, June 5th. And that was Roddy Piper's first match ever, professionally, in which I'm the guy that wrestled against him. And beat the hell out of him, too.
Well, back in that time here in the AWA, that was the major league. You know, WWF was in the north, but they were starting to make their way through inroads here as well, and they were becoming the big company at that point. You still had NWA/WCW, call it what you will. They had the other big stars. So when Tony broke free and put his own together, you basically, perception is you're going to start as like, if you were using a sports analogy, you went from major leagues to, let's say, the AAA franchise.
From that promotion that Tony had put together, we were hitting a lot of small towns around Manitoba to get more experience, more knowledge in the wrestling ring.
I became a full-time promoter now, and instead of 2 matches every month or whatever, I used to produce maximum 150 different events a year. So it was full-time basis here, and slowly I pulled away from the hairstyling business and started promoting wrestling, really.
We grew big because we're going to every town in Manitoba, and we're drawing people. They were all coming out of the bushes. There was places of 2,000 people, 1,000 people, a couple times a week. We were drawing all the big towns in Manitoba.
But back then, when he first started, I mean, that's a tough sled. You're the local guy. I mean, some of these guys worked full-time jobs here, so people knew them as their buddies. And when you become and get that perception, you're trying to, you know, cut your teeth in you're swimming with sharks now. And Tony seemed to manage to do it. I mean, I had a great time just as a Winnipegger getting to tour through Manitoba, Saskatchewan, parts of Ontario. It was fun. It was fantastic.
Portage la Prairie, Brandon, The Pas, Flin Flon, so many towns, you know, every town that I've been to in Manitoba, I've been there.
Pretty much if there was a hall in a town, Tony would book it.
Tony, to expand his business, then we decided to start filming that.
Some of the guys that were in the show was Bulldog Bob Brown, Kerry Pitbull Brown, the Baron, I believe, Bobby Jones, French Mad Dog, and so many that I had to have their names in front of me to remember them.
That's where we pick Club Debout that we're able to get in there and start filming and put it on the local TV to help us to promote ourselves.
He doesn't know where he is right now. Big uppercut by Brunzell.
Bulldog Brown, but I think he's scared of the French Mad Dog.
We had guys that were local guys that was here, and Tony would bring in a few extra guys from Edmonton, Minneapolis, like Benjamin Von Raschke. We had the Bulldog Bob Brown, Ken Petora came a few times, Chris Markoff. So we're getting a mixture of different people coming in to mix with us, local guys, to produce that new era of television that we're promoting right across Manitoba.
You know, Tony had a lot of contacts still because he wrestled in the AWA sometimes as well before he decided he was going to do his own thing. So when you have that network of contacts and those guys start falling off, getting out of the business and everything else, so at one time you're bringing in these legends from, let's say, the American Wrestling Association. Well, they still have some value to you because they've never been seen in some of these towns. So you're bringing the stars basically now to the people.
Some of the bars location that actually I was the first guy to bring wrestling to the bars, believe this or not. Some of the bar with Georgie's on Portage Avenue, we used to tape there for actually Club Taboo, which is kind of the inn on McPhillip, Pandora Hotel, and so forth, so forth. But that's some of the names that we used to tape it for television.
Off the ropes coming. Flying dropkick. Oh! Nails him over the top rope.
But I always loved the vibe that we used to get in some of the nightclubs. The lighting was there, it was a dark room, and it was a whole different idea than what the big boys were doing, like the WWF at the time. And the old arena, like for the AWA, you couldn't compete, you couldn't sell that many tickets. But for 200, maybe 300 or 400 people on a real big night in some of those clubs with the 2 tiers, and you could have yourself a beer, a cold beer, and watch some guys really duking it out sometimes to just try and get a break. And when you're that close to the action, they're laying them in there. I'll tell you, it was a good time.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another week with the WFWA. Joy Ello here at ringside with Bulldog Bob Brown and some exciting wrestling action coming up. Bulldog, a tag team spectacular tonight.
Well, you know, today that we're going to see just how tough Baron Von Raschke is. And the Baron is going to have a partner which he needs to protect him. Now, they're going to go against Eddie Watts and Kerry Pitbull Brown. Now, we're going to see a little finesse in this match because the Baron won a competition. He's going to get it.
The month of November, one you'll never
Look at that, 480-pound dropkick. I just can't believe the things that he does.
Oh, I can't believe it, and I can't believe this. Trying to sever the neck right off of the tulip with that bottom rope strand. And look at the face of Kamala. He's enjoying himself. There you see one of the toughest maneuvers to get out, and I can't believe it. The dog unhooked the leg on that figure 4 leg lock. And the dog is trying to regain some blood in that leg so he can get back up on his feet. This has been action.
When you put 2 veterans in the ring, all you get is a war, a war, a war. And this is what this match is going to be.
All right, the Baron. He didn't fall for it, Bob, and I'm glad he didn't. And he knows where the Sheik and El Casey's from, and the Sheik's running around there like a chicken with his head cut off.
But he seems to have extra power.
There we go, the collision on the 409, head-on traffic. And the Baron and the dog is still holding on to that leg, a lot of pain. There it is. The Baron has got the claw on hot stuff Eddie Watts. All right.
You haven't stepped in the ring with Baron Von Raschke. My fangs are sharp. My claw is sharp. And I'm ready to chew. And I'll tell you what, Kerry Brown. down, I'm gonna chew on you. That's all the people need to know.
All right, Baron Von Raschke.
And what happened then was he developed his own local stars and found some other diamonds in the rough in Canada and brought in a few veterans from the States like a Jimmy Brunzell or a Baron Von Raschke. At some times you had big names like Rick the Model Martel, Canadian, Ken Patera. I mean, we even brought in legends like Gene Kaniski, and even had Nick Bockwinkel come in.
By Kaniski. Roland Kaniski back and forth. Oh, now get away from me. Singles action here in just a second, but ladies and gentlemen, the man you see in your television sets, former AWA heavyweight champion Nick Bockwinkel. Nick, I know it's been a long time coming up here in Canada.
No, but I've always enjoyed it. I lived up here a couple of times, and it's always a pleasure to come back.
Joe Yellow, we're talking about one of the greatest guys that I ever met, that he is still today. The way I met him, I do recall that one of my employees, she's having a social. She's getting married, and she says, Tony, your help maybe bring some of the rest to be security. So I did.
I go up to these guys, and there's Gruff Tony, right? And I said, hey, Mr. Condello, my name's Joe Aiello, and I know this about wrestling, and I know that about wrestling, like I had all the answers.
I sure would like to be a wrestling announcer, and I like to learn, and I'll give you 100%, he says to me, and I say, yeah, okay, kid, and I'll talk to you later.
Just started out doing a mail segment, that kind of thing on the air, because back then there was no email. It was hardcore mail.
I start looking at this guy and says, yeah, it's not too bad for the first time, right? So we kept going. That was his first start. And kept working with the guy for many, many years.
And Tony gave me a shot to just because I was probably driving him nuts, asking him.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another edition of WFWA Main Event Wrestling. Joe Aiello here with you to carry you through the next 60 minutes. We've got plenty of great action coming up. We'll get to that in just a couple of minutes.
I went from doing the stand-up stuff and just shilling the towns on when the shows were coming up to doing some of the play-by-play, which I really had fun with, because as much as wrestling, they'll tell you, is predetermined and everything, it was still live to tape for me, watching the play-by-play develop and the storylines. So they gave me this great foil in this iconic Manitoba figure who made it worldwide in Bulldog Bob Brown.
And Joe, you know, even though that it's about a couple of weeks ago, you seem to be enthused. It's about some time that you get some energy in that body and look a little intelligent for the television people. Hey, I got to say this. You're really up for it today.
All right, we've got plenty of great wrestling action coming up.
So Bob and I mean, he was the old cranky codger, and I was the young whippersnapper in his eyes. And I don't know, we just had this pretty good vibe together, and you know, he would always get cranky and tell everybody this and that to the viewing audience, and it would be my job to get him back and reel him back in to reality. And yeah, I'd take shots at him every once in a while, and sometimes they'd be over his head, and it was just a neat little routine we developed. And you know what? Had nothing but respect for Bulldog, just because I was a young kid and I knew who he was, and he really didn't have to give me the time of day. And we had some good times. God rest his soul, because he was a character.
Now, do you call that justice, Joe? No. What are they going to do about it? How are we going to have another champion? Do you know anything?
Well, before you put your foot in your mouth any further, I might as well tell you and the great fans at home that promoter Tony Condello and the WFWA champion.
A team that I never forget. Bulldog Bob Brown was one of a type. He's from the old school, and always rough and tough, and even Bulldog Bob Brown as a wrestler was one of the toughest guys I ever met in that ring. Anyway, it became a great combination between Bulldog Bob Brown and Joe Aiello, a villain and a good guy. They made a great show.
What if those two were the last men left in the ring?
What do you mean? Maybe Bulldog Bob Brown. Now, that's what you call people with brains. Now, this is what I call it's all even now. This is good.
Joe is a wrestling guy. You know, he's not a television announcer who is hired to announce wrestling. He is a wrestling fan. He was, is, and always will be.
Paradise going to work now, going for a pin. Might be a little too early for that. 2.5. He might have. Whoa, freeze. He almost had the freeze.
We look back at the old tapes, and there was a lot of shtick. And oh, Tony, I'll tell you, But that was Joe, and that's what was great. I mean, it was a combination of the old AWA with a lot of the modern stuff. I know there are people out there in the industry that think that they're very cliche and classic, and it was boring. It wasn't boring. It was fantastic TV. And Joe was the old school wrestling announcer with the modern twist. And I mean, he got the storyline across. He got the message across that the guys in the ring were trying to get across. He helped it out.
Hey, will you off? I'm doing an interview for you. Yeah, it's Aiello. Who do you think this is? Yeah, I got to finish the interview, though. He's asking me all the questions. I'll talk to you later. Bye. He's laughing. Tony.
Oh, yeah.
A character in himself.
So we have a great show for you. Remember, boys and girls, stay away from the ring. We don't want anybody to get hurt. And as you know, look at me.
Well, we've always known Tony. Like I said, we've always known him, and we know what kind of entertainment he puts on. So we called him up, and sure enough, he's here.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, at 215 pounds, First Nation, from Red Valley, Arizona, he is Shadow Extreme.
To the manager, you're going to get Pearl Harbored from behind. Well, let's not talk about the natural right now. Let's talk about the guy.
Don Callis, I guess he answered my one of my ads. If you want to become a professional wrestler, give me a call. Blah blah blah. Look at the guy, and I figure he's got good personnel to be a wrestler. And so I took him on. Right, it took me 7 years teaching the ropes to Don Callis, and every time I had a name known to the wrestling fans, I booked Don Callis against him. So it became a name through television into the wrestling world here in Manitoba.
I'll have you know, promoter Tony Condello has informed me you will face none other than Rick the Model Martel.
What?
You will be facing Rick the Model Martel.
Rick Martel from the World Wrestling Federation. That Rick Martel?
Yes.
Wait a minute, Rick the Model Martel?
Absolutely.
The former world champion? That Rick Martel? Rick Martel from the World Wrestling Federation? Mariani, I can't beat Rick Martel. I mean, I could beat Rick Martel. I could wrestle him. I could do something, but I can't beat. Oh, I could beat him. I could beat him.
What I seen on Don in those days was that, don't forget, this is one-man operation here, and I do the booking, I had to do the book the towns and the television, and it was a lot of work for one individual. But what I seen in Don Callis was he had a lot of talent in many different ways. He could wrestle, he could talk, he could book people. He had all kinds of ideas about wrestling. So I figured, you know what? Let the kid do this. It will take a load off my shoulder. And he did. That's why, like I said, that's why he was an announcer with Joe Aiello. He was a booker. He was a wrestler. Because he had all that talent to do it. So he took a lot of weight off my shoulders. So that's why I let him do it.
Including tag team action coming up in...
All right, Aiello, look, I know you know where Brunzell is. I don't care about a tag right now. The tag is going to happen, and I'm going to go in there, and whoever it is going to get one of these because I'm not a happy man. And I know
at some point, you got to give your star the time on television outside of just wrestling, and that's basically what happened. And he took such a big role in basically writing and producing some of that show from behind the scenes.
Session with legendary superstar Maurice Mad Dog Vachon. Don't you dare miss it.
There you have it, Joe Aiello. He's almost as good as the natural.
No bones about it, Don was very, very talented in the ring. He idolized Ric Flair, and what better person to idolize, especially when you can do everything that Ric Flair did in his heyday and did it as well as he did.
Don was running a lot of the show stuff, and I think that's part of the reason why this whole IWA thing transformed because the guys that were coming in now were all young like Don. And these guys were going somewhere. So this was a great training ground. I mean, Chris Jericho, local kid, went to Calgary, trained. Lance Storm, wow, amazing athlete. You'd see Lenny St. Clair come in as Dr. Luther later on in his career, but even the Edges of the world, and I don't know if there's a lot of footage of Christian when he did some stuff here, you know, and that's the thing, like those guys, a lot of them became superstars. Some of them became well-known worldwide, and that's pretty amazing for a company out of Winnipeg run by an Italian guy that basically, you know, was a hairdresser for a living, that wrestled and decided to open up his own company. Never got rich from it, but a lot of guys did by gaining experience here. It's a great story. And I'm glad that I was a little part of it, just being a Winnipeg kid. Timing was everything, really.
First time that I seen Chris Jericho wrestle was again at Club Taboo, the Canadian. That was his first match there. I can't recall the year, but I knew very well from that moment on, this kid has a lot of talent. You know, the blonde hair, long blonde hair and so forth, the color, the way he wrestled, the way he talked, great interviews. That one of these days he's going to hit big, and he did. Like I said, I can tell a mile away if you have that type of talent.
It was kind of this unknown thing out here because, like I said, it was pre-internet. So nobody really knew that this thing out here existed. You know, this company with like Jerry Morrow and the Great Gamma and Johnny Smith and, like I said, Ultimo Dragon and Jericho and Lance Storm. I mean, it's a ridiculous roster. I mean, it's so chock full of, you know, future world champions in this industry.
I met a guy named Carl DeMarco, which he was the front man as a promoter for Vince McMahon, WWF at that time. I had a meeting with him, and he knew that I was a promoter in Manitoba and Ontario. And he introduced me Adam Copeland and Christian.
Carl DeMarco, who was the head of the Canadian office. I had done some, you know, small shows in and around Ontario and had come in contact with him.
Carl DeMarco asked me to give them all the work possible as far as wrestling, and no favors for them. Put them right through the grinder.
There was no farm system then. There was no FCW to go and learn the WWE way or anything like that. So, you know, he just said, go out and get experience. And then, you know, from being in contact with us and everything and then getting in contact with Tony, it was like, cool, I can send guys out there to get experience.
Remember the name. It's going to be around for a while.
So each 6 months I report back to Vince McMahon and Carl DeMarco how these two kids are doing.
Because Carl really looked after the Canadian guys and wanted Canadian guys to make inroads. And, you know, he could send a whole batch of guys out to Tony and, you know, just get experience.
I was trying to give as much booking as possible and really get them to shape as far as attitude and everything else, because they had some ideas for them and Vince McMahon ideas worked.
It was a good proving ground for people to, it quickly weeded out the ones who really wanted it as opposed to ones who thought it would be a cool, you know, job on the weekends.
And these new up-and-coming stars, well, you'd have to talk to them. I'm just going on economics here. A lot cheaper to bring in these young guys, and the model might have been, the philosophy anyway, not Rick Martel, but the model of the business might have been, you can save money on talent now, but develop your own stars.
Edge or Adam Copeland as a wrestler, phenomenal. I mean, I was in no way, you know, in those days I was still fairly green. I wasn't a judge of who was good or who wasn't, but without question, he was phenomenal in the ring.
You know, I think Tony, you know, saw a bunch of young, hungry kids and didn't just bring us out for that, he brought us out for his TVs too, which was, you know, we hadn't done TV yet.
Like at one time, Tony was like a feeding system almost with all the guys he had, because he had regular dates. So a lot of guys wanted to come here just to gain experience. And the one key that Tony had that a lot of these other Canadian companies didn't, television. And what did these guys want? They wanted their face on television so they could use that on their resume. It's amazing, but this was all before social media and everything else, right? And that was the key. And Tony could give them that.
We can get a TV quality match with camera angles, with commentary, with all of these things. That's just gonna, we can send that out to other promoters down in the States or wherever.
Well, Joe Ace, you had to grow up tough if you came from the Bronx, but Adam Impact, holy cow, look at that move, head scissors takedown. And this match already off and running, some great excitement going here. Irish Ripper reversal now. Ace meets the turnbuckle, and Impact for the crossbody.
Because of number one, television, yeah. That's why they wanted to be on television, so they get the exposure. After you get the exposure through television, you can, if you're really good, if you're a main event or whatever, a main eventer, you can wrestle anywhere. And that's what a wrestler wants. Television is a strong thing to have. And that's why Vince McMahon is on top of the world. He's got the power of television.
We had some amazing talent that had come in for us. I think we were the first promotion in Canada to bring in the Ultimo Dragon. In those days was a fantastic, world-renowned Japanese wrestler who made his name in WCW and WWF and WWE after that, whatever you want to call it. We were drawing because people followed our program every week on TV. And we would tour a lot rurally in Manitoba, and we were getting really good houses because, we had that following. It was a great time to be in the wrestling business.
If you look back at that crew, you could put it on WWE TV today. That's how good it was. And I don't know if I've ever known of another promotion that had that, that group of people that would go on to do what they did.
But it hasn't hurt them a bit because look at Jericho. He is on fire, and so is Chi Cruz, who's recuperated. And they got both men on the run, and I hope that Lenny and Cruz do something soon. They turned that one around there. Holy cow, look at this one. Both of them reverse it one more time. And whole atomic drops there, and both of them outside the ring. And this one, just what I expected might happen has happened. We've got all four of them outside the ring. Well, why isn't the referee disqualify Chi Cruz for coming in? Jericho's a legal man with Lenny St. Clair. Lenny St. Clair and Brian Jewell were trying to have a wrestling match, and the other team, Jericho and Cruz, has turned it into a brawl, and they are going all the way live. And why doesn't the referee disqualify Chi Cruz? Well, I'll tell you what, the referee had the count on, but we got to be close, and the bell has been rung. The referee has counted, I would think, both teams out from what we can see so far until we get his official decision. But look at this, you've got Cruz and Jewell on one side, and on the other side, you can't see him in your television. It said, here we go. You've got Lenny St. Clair with Sunday. He's got a table for crying out loud. My God, Joe, my God, he's going to use a table. And this is the Japanese influence on Lenny St. Clair. Look at him. He's a sick man. He's a twisted man. But look in the ring because Chi Cruz and Brian Jewell are still going at it. He hit him with a table. He threw it at him for crying out loud. I'll tell you what, nothing's safe in this kind of a match unless it's bolted down, and I even have to wonder about that. Look at this. Both men showing some great balance now, holding on to the cage on the top rope, beating each other senseless with right hands and lefts. Both men still on top. When will one of them fall over? Holy cow, these two men have been going at it from the get-go in this one. Look at this. Natural now. Martel barely made it. He almost hit the pole. The Natural. Holy cow, ladies and gentlemen. The Natural singing soprano. That has got to hurt from the top of the cage. Listen to this noise. Listen to this crowd, ladies and gentlemen. They have come to life for Rick Martel. Slingshot, the Natural is in some kind of trouble. We're going to have a new champion. Look, nobody else is going to get in there in time. Come on. Plenty of guys has got to try and get up there. That's a 20-foot steel-high cage from the floor. Look at this. That is sudden impact. Lance Storm from the top of the cage, ladies and gentlemen. I have never seen anybody that high up before. He is coming to help out. Look at this. A cross body from the top rope. He nails both of them. Holy cow, the Natural and Bad News Allen got leveled. But that's it. They're going to work now, and the cage, they finally got it open. Finally, somebody
in Lance Storm coming to the aid of his friend, and all bedlam breaking loose in this one.
Back in 1973, a friend of mine, his name is Phil Fontaine, really, which became later on in life Grand Chief of Canada. He's the one that mentioned to me, Tony, we should take wrestling up north. And that's how it came about for me to go into his Northern tour because of him.
I was one of the first one to be with him on those Northern tours, and that's a whole episode by itself.
Tony was the first promoter that I am ever aware of that went up north with wrestling.
On the winter roads, which is just on ice and across the lakes and everything, and yeah, it was a road to hell, as simple as that.
In the Northern tour, they'd never seen live wrestling in their lives before, in their reservation, that is, in their own location. So actually, you know, he mentioned to me, just phone him, tell me we're talking to me, and blah, 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 and so forth, and I did. And that's how I get into the north and started doing wrestling.
I really enjoyed it, but it was rough, those roads.
Growing up and being in the wrestling business, I used to hear about these northern tours and how horrific they were.
When I got there, and they seen those wrestlers that they'd never seen before, we were bigger than Hulk Hogan up there, believe me.
The real, you know, nitty-gritty of it, and really were the guys that would get in the van with Tony and would go up north. And it was a select small crew. Because you'd have the, you know, the Jerichos that would just come in for TVs. We were getting in that van and we were driving north and wrestling in these places that you just, you know, it was novel to have blonde hair.
You know, we're driving in these 15-passenger vans with 15 passengers, but not 15 normal-sized people. We're 15 wrestlers. So a 15-passenger van should really hold about 8 wrestlers. Really, it should.
We are on the road up there when I do still go, at least 3 weeks, sometime a month. That's how long it takes to get there. Don't forget, because the winter roads is like not like Highway number 1. Sometimes you do 15 clicks an hour, 10 clicks, 5 clicks. Sometimes you get lucky, the roads are very well and very good, and you go maybe 30 maximum. So to travel the distance from one reserve to the other, it's maybe 150 clicks. So figure out how long it's going to take you to get to the first one, or the second, or the third one in that period of time, many hours.
You can't write driving across a lake and going through it and seeing a man like Rhino, who is, you know, 6 feet, 6'1" at that point, 325 pounds, crying like a little girl. I mean, and then Tony poking a stick in the hole, it's okay, it'd be fine. I was like, really, it's fine. There's a hole in the lake. How is that fine? That can't be fine, but it was.
The travel is just atrocious. I mean, my first northern trip, we drove, I think the first day we drove 14 or 20 hours. I can't remember what it was because, you know, you're just oblivious to time. It stands still.
The thing with Tony, I mean, always a cigarette. Always a cigarette. You know, and we would, you know, it's minus 72 out. It's minus 72. You're not rolling the windows down. No, but Tony's smoking. So you'd be in the smoke box with ice on the inside of the windows.
One thing with Tony in those vans, either it was too hot or too cold. Tony didn't have this concept that the heat dial can either be all the way on or all the way off. There's a mid-range, but it would just, you know, so guys would be pouring sweat and shivering, you know, back and forth and back and forth. And then the smoking, oh man. Tony, I love him to death, but my gosh, all he does is smoke and smoke. Chain smoke in those vans. And you know, you'd say, Tony, can you put out the cigarette? And you'd hear, shut up, not smoking. Meanwhile, he's smoking.
We'd be sitting there driving up on this winter road, just bouncing all over the place in this smoky ice box with Tony telling his story. I'm not even going to get into what that means.
When you got there, I mean, the conditions we stayed in, I mean, we're not talking the Holiday Inn. We're talking schools, home ec rooms, sleeping on the gym floors, on blue crash mats or blue gym mats. If you were lucky, you got one of the big soft blue mats, but you had to claim it.
I cannot complain or say anything about it because they give us the best that they had, the best premises for us to sleep, which was the school gym. We had our own mattress and so forth, but that's all they had. Like I said, the chief and consuls and the people themselves they greeted us like you never dreamed. Sometime what's happening really, when we used to get there, chief and consul calls me in, and after 20 hours of driving, that is, says, "Sorry, Tony, but we had a death in our community and everything is canceled." That's their law, and I respect that, of course. Anyway, in other words, after driving 20 hours, you get there to do the show and you're canceled out. But that's the Norton tour. That's what it's all about.
And the problem was you wouldn't know until you got there because you're driving and driving. You know, this is just in the early days of cell phones. There was no cell phone service anywhere you went, and you know there was no way of communicating until you got there and you walked in, and the chief or whoever you met said, you know, "Gee, Tony, I'm sorry, but we had a death this morning, and we have to cancel the show."
We would drive to Oxford House and get there, and there'd be a death on the reservation, and we'd sit there for 2 days, and then we'd drive 48 hours somewhere else, and then come back and make up the Oxford House show.
And Lance Storm coined it the best by calling it the death tour.
They named the trip the Death Tour because of that reason. And it's still today, if you look on the internet, they call Tony Condello's Death Tour, right? It's funny, but it's not. Phil Fontaine, he was a good friend of mine, and Tony says, when you go up there, talk to the kids, stay away from drugs, alcohol, go to school, no gang related and so forth. You know, and back in 1973, I gave that guy my word, is if I do go up there, I will say those things, and up to date, I'll be keeping my word.
I think it's pretty important. Like I said, it's providing good quality entertainment for the community. As you can see in the crowd here, it's got quite a bit of people showed up for this event.
I can say that about 2001, that Tony and his wrestling tour has been coming up to our community. It's not just wrestling that they promote. They come into the classrooms and they talk about drugs, about staying in schools, stuff like that.
Mr. Condello is, he's been the #1 guy that I've been able to, provide my community with the quality entertainment that he provides. But it also has instilled motivation and self-determination in the kids back home from wanting to participate in something similar to what Mr. Condello offers. They always promote a lot of self-awareness, and with that self-awareness comes a lot of self-determination as to where you were, where you are now, and where you want to be in the future.
Let's even up the odds. How about the two of you take on Metalo, Shadow Extreme, and the Canadian legend, Tony Condello.
Hello, I'm wiping his sweat with the flag. The flag.
Come on, Tony. Get up here. Come on, Tony.
What?
Come on, Tony. Come on.
What do you want me to do? What? What, man? What do you want?
Put him in a headlock, Tony.
Put him in a headlock. How about one of these? Yeah. Potatoes. Come on, get up here. All right, what about you? That's it.
Metalo, Shadow Extreme, and Tony
I never looked at Tony as the promoter. I never did. He was one of us.
he was one of the boys, but he was still the office. You know, like I mean, you never hear of the boys pulling ribs on Vince McMahon or pulling ribs on Vern Gagne.
I never had a problem with Tony at all, and we've known each other for so many years, and we really enjoy him being the promoter here in Winnipeg.
But the guy has a big heart. He's got a soft spot. You got to find it, but if you get into that soft spot, he's putty.
He joked around with us. He slept with us, you know, on the blue mats. He ate the craft dinner with us, you know, and all of his quirkiness just added to the point. He's okay. He's one of us. He's in it with us.
I think Tony's biggest quirks or things you can call that are unique to him, definitely the smoking, definitely his mustache, definitely the little Indian, look at this, oh my God.
Stiff, you're stiff, yeah.
Kill the town. You killed the town on me. We can't come back.
His voice too, and it'd be like, and we're going to, and you go, Winkler? Yeah, that's it.
His belly doesn't move. I mean, at that point too, I mean, he's lost weight now. Back then, it was this round, awesome thing. It was just like the Iron Sheiks. It was like, and I would poke it. I'd always go up and poke it, and he'd do like this Pillsbury Doughboy, but it was like the Pillsbury Doughboy after a pack of smokes and a case of beer. It was like, yeah.
And he's probably one of the most unintentionally funny guys I know because he makes you laugh. He's not trying to, but he just does. He just does. He makes you laugh.
But he's also tough as nails and stubborn. If he thinks something worked 50 years ago in his head today, it still works. And that's okay, because I think we see that in any of our parents. So you get that parental side to him as well. And then you get that whole salesman, wrestling promoter side to him as well. He's got so many layers, this guy, right? He probably doesn't even know how many layers.
Oh, you're looking for some booking? Yeah, it'd be my pleasure. When you were thinking about, you know, the price of the event goes up a bit.
He loves to poke people and make them jump and make them char, and it's just, you know, that's his thing. And like I say, he's that lovable, distant uncle that you kind of hope doesn't show up for the big family dinner, but when he does, it's okay. He entertains everybody.
He's about as real as it gets. Whether you agree with his opinion or not, or how gruff he is, that's Tony. He's not an actor. He's telling you straight up. And yet, if he's telling you a story, there's probably nobody better telling you a story.
I do recall one night, and the boys like to play ribs on me. Actually, it happened in Garden Hill.
This tour, Tony was reffing. We're like, Tony, that's it. No, you ref. You got to ref it.
I had no, I would just say referee material to put on to go in the ring, so I had a pair of sweatpants.
Someone had put in, you know, like deep heat in the crotch of the pants before I put them on.
They put this stuff inside my sweatpants and inside my, you know, where it hurts a lot. So I'm in the ring, refereeing. Now all of a sudden what happens? Something get hot, really hot. I'm telling you, burning sensation you cannot stand.
So now he's out in the ring and and everybody's at the back watching, and he's like fidgeting, all squirming and everything. And
trying to scratch and trying to hurry up with the match and trying to give a fast 3 count, and it didn't work. They're laughing their heads off in a sense. And
we get to this one spot in the match, and Lenny goes, put me in the corner, give me 10 punches. Cool. Start giving him 10 punches. I step back. Lenny walks out, does the Ric Flair bump, and pants Tony right in the middle of the ring.
He came to upon a time there, in some spot or the other, they even pulled my trunks down.
And Tony did, and he's got these little jockey briefs on. and then we held on to the pants so he couldn't get the pants back up.
As a team, that's what we do. We rib each other most of the time, so I would just say to pass the time away.
And that's why I say, like, Tony wasn't a promoter, he was one of us. You cannot name another promoter that you could have that fun with. There just isn't.
And honestly, he's probably one of the greatest characters I've ever met in my life. And I've met a few over the years in my radio career and even doing some television stuff. But probably I'd say he's a lot softer than people think. And yet, one of the toughest guys I've ever met. I've never seen him back down from anybody. He must be the scariest senior citizen out there.
So I never pictured Tony as the promoter. I always pictured Tony as my friend Tony.
I'm glad for what I did, like I said, because I opened up a lot of doors for a lot of the young generation to become a superstar. And I'm proud of that, really. So I think I did something that I wanted to do, and I achieved that. And I brought live wrestling that people never seen it before in their community. That's quite an achievement in 40 years.
There's a phone call came through, sheriff's office. You remember?
Sheriff.
Sheriff. The sheriff.
Policeman.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Sheriff office. I do recall it.
Yeah. Okay. All right.
Cat Lake Sheriff.
Cat Lake Sheriff. So we go to the office. Tony goes, hey, it's Carl DeMarco on the phone. Hey, Carl DeMarco.
Oh, it's Carlo. Oh, he's the sheriff now.
No,
was
he's
that?
not the sheriff. He's calling the sheriffs.
Oh, he's calling the sheriffs. Yeah.
Not Omar Sharif, not Sharif.
Sharif.
Sheriff. So he calls the sheriff's office. You said, hey, we got to go. DeMarco wants to talk to you. And he was with me when I found out that I had my first WWF contract. So Tony was actually standing there, and he knew too, bastard. And he was looking, waiting. And so I got the news that I was signing a contract, and from there, heading down to Stanford to sign the deal. And I think I jumped over you.
In other words, all the hard work, all the complaining, all the trips that we had, going through the ice, and the pig story, whatever you did to Tony Condello, your buddy, your friend, not the promoter, but your friend. I was one of the guys, and still am today.
Did.
Of all the things that we did, and you went through them, and you took them better than a soldier. At the end, what happened? You paid it off, didn't it?
Yep. Sure did. And Tony was there for it.
You know, it's a good thing that today we're going back 20 years already, my God. And we can laugh about it.
I love how you set everything up like it's a story, like it.
Yeah, it's no regrets by all means, not on my part. And well, a few of them, they painted my hair yellow, and they did this, they did that. But I tell you, I'm still doing it today, actually. You want to come back to Oxford House? I don't know why. There you go.
No, I don't.
He did it.
There it is. There's the end of your documentary right there.